Oh
Like
my
so.
gosh,
Yeah.
that's beautiful.
It's a present from my wife.
I should think so.
Yeah.
Wow, really nice.
Imported wood. Well, first of all, I'm really happy to be here. And what I'd like to do today is share with you some of the insight that I've gained over the years. One of the things I think is important is that teachers realize how valuable you are. Most teachers don't realize the influence you have on the students. Students come back to me and they tell me, even though I may not know it while I'm teaching them, they come back as adults and say that was a turning point in their lives. So we are sometimes even more valuable than an English teacher, math teacher. Normally in English or math, they have them for one semester. With music, we have them for an extended amount of time. If you're someone who teaches both middle school and high school, you may have a person for, 7 years. So we spend a lot of time with these students, and as we do, we can impart a lot of concepts to them, a lot of values to them, and the role that we play is very important. What we sometimes forget is that our conducting shapes what we hear. Whenever I'm not hearing what I want to hear, the first person I look at is myself. I don't yell at the kids first. I make sure that I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I remember a student of mine from Central who called me up and said, I'm conducting this middle school orchestra, and could you come and watch my conducting? What am I doing wrong in conducting because I can't get them to do what I want them to do? So I said, okay. So I got up. It was it was zero period. I hate the mornings, but I got up. She's a good student. I mean, she was a good person. And so I sat in the back of the class and I watched, and the kids were all over the place. Her conducting was just fine. Very clear, very precise. She was looking at the students. Unfortunately, the students were doing this. And when it was over, they looked up. And there was absolutely no connection from the very first time she gave her downbeat until her cutoff. So I took her aside afterwards. I said, well, my fee was a cup of coffee and a donut. And so we had our little talk. I said, your conducting is just fine. You're not making them watch you. And I said, the first thing you have to do is make sure you have eye contact. If you don't have eye contact, forget it. It doesn't matter. Now, once you get the eye contact, then they also have to have contact with each other. So when you have eye contact, then you have to give them something to look at. I was able to demonstrate once that I could actually conduct without hands, because 90% of the conducting is your body language. What I'd like to do in this session is to give you some exercises that I've learned from some very fine teachers, both here and in Europe. And you can use these exercises whether you're teaching choir, band, or orchestra, whether you're teaching 12th grade or middle school or elementary, because the students will react to what you're doing. They'll feel it, they'll see it and react. They may not know why they're reacting to it, but they will, and I guarantee it. Someone said, well, you know, you're a conductor and you've conducted professional orchestras, and I'm teaching 6th grade band. I said, well, I taught 6th grade honor band for a long time, and they were good. And they watched. And they had this big, full, rich sound. But it was because of my expectations, and it was because of how they responded to what I was doing. I'd like to give you some exercises now that will get you ready. Would you all stand up and do this? If you're touching someone, then you should move. I'm going to show you something. With your right hand, I want you to chop. Do this. Just chop, chop. Extend it out. Just chop. You don't have to do it too hard. Don't hurt yourself. But just chop. Now, as we chop, I'm going to show you something. Very often, the tension that we have in our body will be felt by your ensemble. And the tension that we normally have first and foremost is in our shoulders. Now, I want you to just drop your arm, the one that you chopped. Look around and look at the shoulders. Do you see that the chopping shoulder is lower on every single person? Because now this shoulder is relaxed. And this is where you were before you did that. Yep. Yep. Mm-hmm. Okay,
I'm very self-conscious of my shoulders.
Now, okay, let's equalize it. Take the other hand. and now our shoulders are going to be relaxed. So that just shows you that even though you may not think your shoulders are tense, they are. And so that's the first thing you want to do. You have to think of yourself as an athlete in many ways, because what you do physically will come back to you through the students. Okay? Now, one of the things that we talk about in conducting is that we want to start with a nice solid foundation. And you want to think of your feet just kind of sinking into the ground. So if you just let your weight fall, relax your shoulders, and let your feet sink into the ground. Relax your knees. You don't want tight knees. You want the knees to relax, and all your attention go down through the body, through the hips, through the knees, through the feet, into the ground. The next thing is that you want your head to rise. As your feet sink and your head rises, your chest expands. As your chest expands, you get a different sound from your group. Relax. So one of the things you want to do when you take the podium is that you want to relax. You want your feet to go into the ground. You want your head to come up like so. And then you want your chest to open. So let's talk about each part of the body. Your arms, as you're conducting, need to be relaxed. If you have a stiff arm like this, then that's the sound you will get from your students. Relax the arms. Relax the wrist. Relax the fingers. Because eventually you'll need that. No matter how dynamic you want an attack to be, every single dynamic starts from a relaxed position. So if you want a big crescendo, it starts from a relaxed position. The more relaxed you can be at the beginning, the bigger gesture you can make. At University of Michigan, there's a teacher, and string players will know her when I say the name, Elizabeth Green. Elizabeth Green is probably known for her string techniques and her bowings. Well, I studied with Elizabeth Green. What people don't realize is that she's also a very fine conducting teacher. She took on private students, and there were professional conductors all over the world who had begun conducting lessons with Elizabeth Green. Let me kind of set up the picture for you. My very first lesson. This is in the suburbs of Ann Arbor. There's a little creek, kind of in the woods. So I got to her house, and I smelled cookies. And she said, "Hello, let's talk." So I went to the table, and we had tea and cookies. She said, "I made some cookies just for you." And so we talked about my experience in conducting. And she said, "I'm a violist, so I'm going to have you conduct for me. I'm going to sit in the viola section and watch you." And so she turned the record player on, and I conducted. And she said, "You know, that was very nice, but we have some things to work on. You did the same thing," and she mentioned names of conductors who were associate conductors of the Philadelphia, associate conductors in New York who had been with her. She said, "They had the same problem too, but I gave them some exercises, and those exercises really helped them. So now we're going to have you do those too. I would be happy to play for you, but there's some things we want to work on." So I'm going to share these exercises with you. Okay, the first thing I want you to do is hug your tree. I always call it hugging a tree. And then leading with the wrists, I want you to go out and then in. Now, as you do this, I want you to breathe. Breathe in and then exhale. Breathe in. Exhale. What you're going to find is that your chest will expand. As you address your students, they will feel that expansion. They'll give you a different tone. They won't know why, but they will. Okay? The next thing I want you to do is do it this way. We're going to change now. Leading with the wrists. Now, sink your feet into the ground, head into the sky, chest open, breathe from your diaphragm. Your blood pressure is going to go down too. Okay. As you do this, relax your shoulders and let your shoulders go downward as opposed to upward. Make sure your shoulders are nice and relaxed. Again, sink your heels into the ground. So as she's teaching me these exercises, I said, well, what is this all about? I want to be a conductor. But I did it. No. Okay. Now, these same exercises can be done more marcato. So you could also do this. And so on. Now, the tricky part. You could have one hand doing one exercise and another hand doing another exercise. So here's one exercise. At the same time. And you can have them do different time signatures. For instance, And the final thing is that you could do staccato in one hand and legato in the other with different exercises. So it gets a little involved. Yeah, is it like so? Well, this is nice and smooth. It's difficult to do one legato and one marcato. So these are just exercises because you can very well imagine you're conducting, and this is a cue. This is a crescendo, diminuendo. This is a crescendo for one group, diminuendo for the other. So you're going. Yeah. So this could be one way and this could be another. You're addressing two things at once, or this way or this way. But you can experiment with the combinations. Taking these exercises, experiment with the combinations. Now,
excuse me.
Mm-hmm. As you prepare the score, I always memorize my scores. First I memorized my scores because I had to, but when I was teaching, it was for self-defense. People in the back were always doing things, and if you do this, no telling what they're doing in the back. And so eye contact was very important because it kept them honest. At least they knew that I was watching. So to have eye contact is very important. And I always say keep the score in your head and not your head in the score. And so to memorize it phrase by phrase gives you the ability to have eye contact. I would say 90% of what I want from a group, no matter strings, choir, band, I get from my eyes. I've done a whole movement of a piece like this, just with the eyes. 90% is eye contact. So the eye contact is extremely important, especially in the back. The further away from you they are, the more eye contact you need, because they'll tend to go off in their own little world if you don't. There was a very eccentric conductor named Sergiu Celibidache, Romanian. I studied with him, and it was an experience that I will never forget. I have my certificate. Celibidache was angry with the world because during World War II, he was in line to be the next conductor of the Berlin Philharmonic. However, he was not Aryan, he was not German, he was Romanian. Herbert von Karajan was German. Karajan got the job, even though Celibidache was better. So he was angry, and he was very esoteric. Classes began at 9 o'clock in the morning, and they finished when he got tired, which was normally about 9 o'clock at night. And he would let us have 15 minutes for lunch, and that was about it. He was invited to conduct the New York Philharmonic. He says, well, I need 30 rehearsals. They said, Maestro, we normally give 3 rehearsals, but for you we'll give 5. He says, no, thank you. So this is the kind of the guy he was. But the first 2 or 3 days, we had very sore arms. because everything that he did involved a particular type of click. And we're going to work on that click. And I'll show you the applications after you see it. I want you to do this. Just swing your arms like a 3-year-old. Just let go. I remember in one of my conducting workshops, we were supposed to just listen to the music and walk around and swing our arms and not keep a beat. And we couldn't do it. We couldn't do it. Little kids can do it, but we can't. Okay, just swing your arms. Now, nice and straight here. And I want you to give a little impulse. Let it. Okay, so raise it up, relax. Make it as relaxed as you can. Don't force it, just allow it to happen. And so for the entire first day, we were learning how to do this. The implications are this. You see that? Little pulse. It goes from here to so when you need that click, that pulse, first relax your arms and then work on the large. Work on the large and bring it down to small. Okay. Let's talk about the body mechanics. First of all, we talked about the feet, we talked about the head. The shoulders should be relaxed. The knees should be relaxed. The arm should be parallel to the floor, like so. If there's an imaginary line that goes from your center to infinity, your hand should meet that line right about there. Okay? Like so. What you want to do is make sure your wrist is relaxed. Make sure your fingers are relaxed. And as you conduct, you have to decide what you want to use. You can use your shoulders, but you don't want to use that very often. This is big. So as you're conducting with your shoulders, this is very big, and you don't want to do that very often. The next part is from the elbow, keeping the shoulders relaxed. The next part is from the wrist, keeping the shoulder and elbow relaxed. And with the baton, you can actually, the next part would be with the finger. Finger, wrist, elbow, shoulder. So you have to decide, what does the music dictate? If it's piano, you don't want to do this. One thing you might want to do is find a wall. It's hard to find a wall. I'll use this one. Find the wall and put your shoulder against the wall. Raise this. That will eliminate all this extra movement.